Hello and welcome to our second session of the day, How Financial Restraints Can Drive Creativity and Food Allergy Safety. I'm Tiffany Leon and I'll be your moderator for this session. Today, we are grateful to be joined by Erskine from the Fortune Project, Sammy Reilly from DC Central Kitchen, and Wendy Pake from FOODiversity. I will let them all introduce themselves, but let's start off with Carly. If you want to introduce yourself and how you manage food allergies at your organization.
Yes, I'm the Director of Food and Nutrition for the Fortune Society. It's a nonprofit that works with formerly incarcerated individuals and helping them reacclimate to society. So we provide different services, multiple services, employment services, food and nutrition, which is my wheelhouse, as well as case management and many other things.
That's awesome. You guys are doing some amazing work and look forward to hearing more about your organization and everything you do with food allergies. Let's move over to Sammy. Thank you for joining, Sammy.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Sammy. I work for DC Central Kitchen. We are a nonprofit and social enterprise that combats hunger and poverty through job training and job creation. A lot of our work with allergies goes into our school foods program. So we feed about 19 schools around the DC metro area. And we focused on making sure all students that have either, we call them dietary accommodations, kind of not use the word allergies to label. They all have a hot meal if it's a hot lunch day, a cold meal if it's a cold lunch day, and that they have as close to an option as their peers as possible. So looking forward to talking more today.
Great. Thank you so much. And Wendy, certainly not last, but not least.
Thank you. My name is Wendy Pake. I am the Executive Director of FOODiversity. I'm trying to center myself here. Our mission at FOODiversity is to lessen the burden for individuals and families who are experiencing food insecurity and also managing food allergies. Our clients are the frontline emergency providers, so the food pantries, the backpack organizations, the healthcare systems, K through 12, and college student service administrators. Our target population often slips through the cracks when it comes to being accommodated with safe foods. Not many, or maybe none, of the drive-through food box distributions asked about dietary restrictions. People waited in the long lines that we saw on TV during COVID, and many went home empty-handed. So FOODiversity raises awareness, provides educational and financial support, and works with our client organizations, most are nonprofits like us, to increase access for those that were previously not being served fully, I should say. We assist our clients to achieve competencies in both welcoming and accommodating applicants who have specific food needs. And we recognize that these same clients, the frontline emergency food providers, are a key connector to our target population. So we use these already established distribution channels to provide information, education, and support for those in the community who otherwise might not have access. And I'm looking forward to the conversation today. So thanks.
So many exciting things, and I'm really happy that you are here to share your expertise and all that you're continuing to do down in North Carolina.
Thank you.
Sammy, it looks like you've got a lot of activity back there.
Yeah, I am in the office, so apologies if there's people walking around in the background.
No, it's great to see everything happening in real time. As a follow-up question, because we kind of talked about how you're managing food allergies in your organization, is there a different process? And I'll start with Sammy because I'm talking to you. Is there a different process when you're managing a student with food allergies that are within the top 9 as with someone without the top 9?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we try to make sure a lot of our meals in general avoid the top 9 as much as possible. So all of our dietary accommodations try to avoid that. Soy is obviously the hardest thing to avoid. I know it's not quite as common, but it's in almost all foods, especially when it comes to school foods. But we are a nutless facility in general. We don't provide any food with nuts, so we don't have to worry about any of that. Pork is also commonly, I know it's not an allergy, but it's also commonly referred to items if people don't want to eat. So we make sure our facility is also entirely porkless. But basically what happens is parents fill out a comprehensive form at our schools, or the adult can speak for themselves when it comes to our community meals programs, and they submit it to us. And then our registered dietitians look it over and create personalized menus actually for each student. So we don't really have one menu for the top 9 allergens and then different menus for students with different dietary accommodations. We actually give each child their own separate menu catered to their dietary accommodations. Of course, if we have a couple kids who are dairy free, then they'll get the same menu. But if we have a student who maybe has, say, Crohn's disease and can't have spicy foods, he'll get his own menu without any spicy foods, whereas the other kids will get different foods that match the regular menu.
How many dietitians do you have working at your site? Or on your
Right now, it is just myself and my other dietitian Travertine. So there's 2 of us. We do have an opening for a 3rd position. If there's any dietitians on this call, shameless plug. So we will have 3 when we're fully staffed.
Okay, great. And I know I'm talking specifically to you on this one, but I just want one follow-up question for my own curiosity. How do you ensure that what you are planning on paper for these students based on the form is translated to what they get on their tray?
Yeah, so we have a lot of direct, we're lucky as a smaller food purveyor to have a lot of direct eyes on the food. So a lot of the food, I'm actually sitting in our main production facility right now. So a lot of the food gets made here, but when it comes to the actual allergens, when the food leaves here and goes to our schools, our leads in our schools take care of that. So they get either specific food items that are allergen free, like from say like Mom's Organic or Whole Foods, that one of our employees will go drop off for them. It gets kept in a separate spot in the fridge, in the freezer. And then we have eyes on the food. They have their own binder with the child's picture, the child's form that obviously no one else can see besides the workers. So we so we are constantly checking. We're constantly checking on the food that's going in and out of the kitchen, and they get a different kind of review on it every single month.
Got it.
We'll
we did have 2 questions that came in, actually 2 comments, 1 question. Sherry says, I'd like to take Sammy up on her shameless plug, so you may be hearing from her afterwards. But Danielle is asking, how many students do you make accommodations for? And you're on mute.
Thank you. We have about 30 students right now that we make accommodations for, including our dairy-free students. At the height pre-COVID, where we had kind of a bit more participation, we're trying to dig into why it's kind of decreased a bit. It was about 45 to 50, but right now we're hovering around 30 for about 19 schools.
Okay.
And these are students who have like specific dietary restrictions, like those who just need things like lactate or different kinds of milks. Those get addressed on the side that don't require a form.
Got it. Carly, I'm going to bring you back on screen because I want to ask you a question now.
No problem. My screen just, my video just keeps cutting off. I'm not sure why.
It's okay. So how many participants are you seeing at the Fortune Project that may have food allergies, and what's your accommodations process within the top 9 and then outside of the top 9?
So essentially in admissions, we have an admissions department at our main headquarters. They take care of the initial intake, and then it's transferred over to the case managers, depending on whether our clients become residents or if they're just participants who receive meals at our main facility. So that's kind of how we filter down the nutritional information for each person. And then after that, we have, they're referred to me for nutritional counseling sessions. So then we sit down and discuss what their allergens are or sensitivities, and determine some best practices that they can follow when they're, depending on which site they go to. So every situation is kind of different.
Are all of your participants 18 or older?
Yes, we're mostly adult population.
Mostly adults. Okay, so some of these participants may have been managing food allergies their whole life. We do know that there is adult onset food allergies, so maybe they are new, but they may be more familiar with managing food allergies.
Yeah, for the most part, they're familiar with managing their own food allergies. However, my population is a little special in terms of these are formerly incarcerated individuals, so they didn't have as many accommodations that they do now have. So for the most part, many of them are used to putting themselves at greater risk just for the sake of getting some kind of nutrition because there weren't that many options available when they were incarcerated.
Wow. Yeah, that's so scary because you never know. And we've talked about this in other sessions now that this is day 3, but you never know what a reaction is going to be. Mild reactions in the past don't predict future reactions. So that's really scary to be putting themselves at risk like that. But I mean, when food isn't as bountiful, I can see where hunger may take over. So they're lucky to be able to work with you, Carly, at the Fortune Project. So when you, and I don't want to leave Wendy out. So Wendy, do you work with a lot of volunteers, and what sort of training do you provide staff or volunteers as it relates to food allergy and food allergies?
Well, really, we work with the frontline organizations, and then they have the volunteers. So it's kind of twofold. I guess it depends on if we have a couple different programs. So when we're working with the food pantries, we mostly provide guidance and support so that they're better able to accommodate. And we also help them with their programs. And one program in particular is at one food pantry, they put in place a culinary training program for their food pantry participants. And we were able to add value there by recommending that they also add food allergy safety to this program. And we did that through, well, as you know, FAIR's fit or FAIR check instructor training, which we call FAIR fit. So, and so the pantry applied for and received a scholarship from FAIR. And now one of the culinary workforce development trainers is certified in food allergy safety. And so what this has done is has, first of all, allowed the culinary students, I'm sorry, I have a distraction for a minute. What this has done is provide the culinary students to have a stronger resume with food allergy safety. And so when they go to restaurants, they're maybe higher up on the job applicant list than others might be. And also, a lot of restaurants are volunteering in the food pantry or have partnerships. So we make this partnership even stronger by offering the restaurants qualified kitchen staff that can actually go into their restaurant with some level of understanding about cross contact and just a stronger knowledge of how to keep all diners safe, especially those with food allergies. So our situation is a little bit different, but we're always thinking about how we can prepare the clients that we work with to best train their volunteers or the people that they're in contact with, so that they can keep anybody that comes through their doors safe with food allergies. So
yeah. Well, thank you for that shameless plug for our Fair Check instructor training.
Thank you for all you do.
Our next training is Monday, actually Monday, November 7th from 12 to 2. And we do accept, Wendy is right, we do accept scholarships. Feed NC, I think that's the organization she was talking about, has participated in the training. Carly has participated in the training. We had someone from DC Central Kitchen participate in the training. So if anyone on the call is interested, there's still time to register on Monday. Sammy, do you work with volunteers, and you have a cook training program as well? Can you talk about that?
Sure, yeah, we have a culinary job training program. So one of the main social enterprises of DC Central Kitchen is to provide those individuals who have been previously incarcerated or have barriers to employment, to give them the skills they need to get back into the workforce, to kind of take them out of the cycle of needing our services. Instead of you need our services, they're now providing our services to other people and they're making a living wage. So we have a 12-week program that comes in. We have about 25 students per program right now. So it happens every 3 months just about. And they go through a varying course learning about how to cook from A to Z, knife skills. They do take a nutrition class. They do different kinds of self-empowerment as well. And then what happens is, honestly, most of those workers, they either get re-employed with us here at DC Central Kitchen, either in our schools or at either of our kitchens, or they go out and they start working at restaurants around the city. And it's really exciting time for all of them. It's always a really great venture for us. So that's kind of similar to what Wendy was talking about. We have a similar program for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And do they have food allergies? When you mentioned nutrition, do they have like food allergy specific training during that time, or maybe during like some other meal prep trainings?
Yeah, so our staff who work in our schools especially, and then all of our leads and managers on our floor here, they go through Allertrain. It's not quite fair, but they do take the Allertrain training. So they get definitely like the top 9 allergens. Everyone has to have a certificate with them. In our schools, someone has to be on staff at all time that has the Allertrain certificate. All of our admin staff has it as well. So they do get that in-depth Allertrain training. And then we do come in as dietitians and speak to them here and there about topics they might be interested in. And usually allergies is one of them, because a lot of times we find that they might have kids of their own that they're interested in wondering and learning about more about that. So what we're gearing up towards in the future as DC Central Kitchen is growing is we're going to basically make tracks out of our culinary job training program. So after 6 weeks of class, they'll go out into almost like an externship. So they'll come on to the Healthy School Foods team, or they'll go on to our Healthy Corners team, which is like community meals. And they'll get to sit and learn about more about each program to give them maybe a bigger variety of somewhere to get a job down the line.
That sounds like a great idea. I mean, it's awesome to hear that you guys are expanding, and it's nice to have different tracks so they can, have expectations for what the training is going to consist of. When you work with volunteers, and this is outside of the jobs training course, when you work with volunteers, do you provide any food allergy training to them, or is it mostly like you have those that are trained in Allertrain, you have the leads, they're the ones that are managing the allergy friendly meals or specific meals?
Correct. Yeah. So our volunteers mostly work on just chopping, kind of like produce chopping, and they kind of stay away from the allergens just because of cross contact and cross contamination. We don't really want to take that chance, especially with our kiddos in schools. So our volunteers don't get any direct Allertrain training because they don't touch anything that has to do with any top 9 allergens. However, we do take dietetic interns on, and our interns definitely do get allergen training. They definitely do work with the allergen kind of students at our schools and those menus. So in the interpretation of volunteer, our dietetic interns do, but not our everyday volunteers. No, we have a very large database of volunteers that go through, and they cycle in for like 4 hours at a time. So to provide constant allergen training would be a big feat for that division.
Yeah, totally. I was thinking back to my dietetic internship when you brought that up. I don't remember anything allergen specific in my internship. So that's awesome that they have exposure to, food service management as it relates to allergies specifically, because I think in my internship, it was maybe 6 weeks of food service, and maybe you had some trays that, didn't have milk on it, didn't have eggs on it, but I don't remember like a really in-depth educational experience on food allergies, at least during my internship. So that's great that they have that exposure.
Yeah, we take a lot of interns for the 6 to 8 weeks of their food service internships. And since our dietitian does do the in-depth meal calendars for each of them, they'll be able to sit and see what those menus are. When they go to the schools, they'll be able to see the students who have the meals there. We have also a high need school with students who have different consistencies like pureed or soft texture. So they also get to kind of experience that, and those foods are bringing in for those students. So it's a pretty comprehensive rotation that we're able to provide.
And Carly, do you work with volunteers at your site?
Not in the same capacity. So currently we're not accepting any volunteers that work directly with food. Kind of similar to Sammy, we do have our own culinary program where we do train cooks and things like that. And they also receive some form of allergy training, not as extensive as our on-site regular cooks. However, we are planning to expand our offerings by opening up a food pantry. So during that time, we will probably have volunteers, and then we'll, because they're working with me, they'll definitely get some form of food allergy training.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
And that makes me just springboarding off of what Carly said. We do offer advice or guidance, I should say, to the food pantries and to even, as far down as a K through 12 school or the cafeteria staff, where for the food pantries, for example, we explain to the food pantries how important it is for the volunteers to be trained, for instance, never to guarantee that a food is safe for a person. So how to, ask about dietary needs, but at the same time, share information, maybe more like, and another shameless plug for FAIR, more like you're reading labels, print materials, and we, provide that to pantries in English and Spanish, so that we're helping the food recipients take control of the allergy for themselves or for their child, and also not putting the pantry in a situation where they've guaranteed a food is safe without, and making someone feel a false sense of security, and then maybe they don't read the ingredients and give it to their child. So we would never, so that's one of the big priorities of our training.
Yeah, and you've worked with food pantries in hospitals, is that right?
We have, and it's really along the same lines as the community pantries, where just and most of the pantry work, we start off by raising awareness. What do you do to help with dietary restriction or dietary needs, special dietary needs? And a lot of times they might have not even heard somebody mention it, because as a lot of people who need that special accommodation, whether you're at a restaurant or walking into a pantry, sometimes you just take the easy way out and just say, well, I'll get food for 2 of my kids and I'll figure out what to do with my 3rd child who has food allergies. So we train them to ask the right questions so that people with allergies feel welcome. And then also how to have some supply of food allergy friendly food, just to get someone, just so people don't have to walk away empty handed. But it's more of a downstream solution to the hunger issue, of course. So
Yeah. Do you, Sammy, do you guys provide like pantry items to some of your participants as well? I'm thinking back to, 2 years ago when the pandemic was fresh, and a lot of the schools were closed down, and so a lot of programs were still providing lunches or at least boxes of food for some of the families. Can you speak to some of that?
Yeah, so ours is it's definitely ever evolving. So during the pandemic, we were providing hundreds of thousands of grocery bags out of the convention center here in DC for adults around the city. In our schools, we're providing meal kits out to schools. I think we had 8 of our 19 schools open for students to come through and pick up meals. They're like meal kits for 3 days worth of meals, and they come in like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the following days. Last year, as school came back, we were still providing grab and go meals. We call them off-site meal service. So students who either were quarantined with COVID, their classroom was out with COVID, their school was closed, their parents were uncomfortable sending them back to school. We had schools around each area that were open for parents to come pick up meals for their students. They could still eat at home, and they were still reimbursable and claimable, which was great. Thank you, USDA. Now we have kind of moved on a little bit away from that. So we have stopped providing off-site meal service. However, we are providing grocery bags to some of our seniors in DC. And then we are also pairing up with DC Food Project, which is another nonprofit in DC. And what they do is they set up like a pantry in each school. They are in about 8 of our schools now, which is essentially, think of like a hardware closet, almost. It's like a double door metal closet. And in there we have a lot of toiletry staples. We have a lot of dry shelf stable foods, and the students can then come to a discrete place and take what they need home. Without anyone kind of seeing. There's no like backpack they're getting and like walking home with it. They just put it right in their backpack, close their backpack, and walk out the back door towards the buses. So that's what we're doing right now. We're more partnering with other projects right now to make sure those needs are met throughout our schools. But we purchase all that project and give it to those partners to then hand out.
How do you decide what types of foods go into these projects? Like what types of food you're offering?
Right. So a lot of it is what they request, what parents might request, or what students might request, what they can have at home. You have to keep in mind a lot, like what can a student use safely at home? So can a 5th grader use a stove? maybe not. So you got to think of other kind of items that you might be able to use. Can they use a microwave? Yeah, probably. So it's more kind of trying to find the medium of like healthy foods that can be made in these ways without kind of relying on canned items. Then you have to have a can opener, like it's just a lot of different ways. So we work with DC Food Project, who works with the parents and the students to find out what they can and do use. And then we put that into like what the order is going to end up being.
Got it.
Yeah, a lot of cross information that has to happen.
It's nice that you're taking recommendations or requests from the community versus just, kind of guessing what you think they may need, because when you have to think about different backgrounds and cultures, and you mentioned needs, can a fifth grader use a microwave? Yes, but do they have a microwave in their home? So there is a lot that goes into food prep. Oh, I see someone's raising their hand. I won't be able to hear your question because you guys are muted. So if you have questions, just make sure you put them in the chat or in the Q&A box. But yes, it's taking into account a lot when you're trying to meet the needs of some of these kiddos. I'm just going through my notes here. We already asked you that question. So Carly, let's go back to you, because I know you do have a culinary background, which is awesome. So are there any new recipes that you've tried as a result of accommodations for someone with food allergies?
Great question. And I'm ashamed to say no, not that I can think of. I feel we typically go the route of having the staple meal that we're planning to have, and then having an alternative. So we already know if we're serving fish or shrimp or some kind of seafood for that day, because we do have a lot of individuals with seafood allergies here, we'll have chicken ready to go. So that's typically how we navigate that, not necessarily changing the menu around, because another issue is kind of trying to accommodate as many people as possible and making the menu more mixed. So it gets really tricky that way.
Yeah,
that's the route we go. Yeah.
So having a main menu with a backup with some obvious like known allergens, for example, if you are serving eggs for breakfast, knowing that you may have some sort of other alternative, or you mentioned fish or shellfish, some other alternative, because there are, 9 foods that make up 90% of the food allergies, and then kind of go from there and get creative if someone does have different needs for those meals. Do you guys do, I know you mentioned like a regular meal cadence for your participants. Do you ever do like outside events or like other community events where you may see like attendees that have food allergies? And if so, how do you get those requests? Or is it more, in real time, someone's showing up and says, hey, I have food allergies, can you accommodate here?
It's more the latter. So we typically have our staples, things that we know are more allergen friendly. So like we have sunflower seeds, we have sun butter, we have a lot of those things on hand so that we can accommodate whoever may walk into the door, because at our facility, we also have those who walk in off the street looking for a meal. So we try, again, to have these things on hand at all times so that we accommodate as many people as possible.
Yeah. Great. We did have a question, and it's sort of similar, but I'll pose it to Sammy. Oh, look, she's busy. Sammy, what are some popular menu options offered for those with allergies that are not high cost and simple to produce?
Yeah, I'm looking at my other dietitian here. That's why I keep turning my head.
Okay, good.
She's sitting right next to me. So what I had written down was we have a lentil sloppy joe that actually our kids love. So lentils are pretty cheap and they're decently easy to make if you have a big pot of them. So the pros are that it looks a lot like our regular sloppy joe. So no one really will know if you're eating lentil sloppy joe versus the regular sloppy joe, and it goes in the whole wheat bun. So that's definitely one of our more popular ones. Also, I was just talking to Travertine sitting next to me. She's a dietitian. She was saying our veg out chili is also really popular. So we have like a 3-bean chili.
So mine.
Yeah, sorry, Carly.
Yeah, chili and rice is the go-to.
Yeah, the veg out chili is definitely one of the main. That's actually coming up the menu next week when I start our winter cycle. So they're definitely really excited about that. But lentil sloppy joe has been surprisingly well received, and people are asking for it on days where it's not even on the menu. So that's definitely one of our highs. We find that tofu's hard to sell to kiddos. So we used to have a tofu sloppy joe. We moved that out, moved to lentil for the texture, and it's a lot better now. So we try to stay away from as much tofu as possible, except for like maybe in our Asian dishes we'll do the tofu instead, but the lentils are a good sub for the lentil sloppy joe.
I mean, I'm with the kiddos. You can't like sneak tofu in there in a sloppy joe and make me think that I'm that I'm eating the real thing. I'm with them.
Yeah, so we make adjustments. We actually, what you saw behind me, my other colleagues are going over our student surveys in schools right now. So they're looking at different comments that kids have. We do student surveys twice a year, and make sure we take all of their feedback like into consideration. Since we're so small, our menus are able to be pretty volatile.
Yeah.
So we're able to put kind of recommendations in as soon as like this March when our spring menu starts. So.
And what's your substitution for wheat for the bread? Do you just have another option? What do you serve for them?
So they can either have it with brown rice, or we have brown rice bread, and we also have gluten-free wraps that we buy. So any of those options. And
Carly mentioned chili with veggies, which is great. And as a dietitian, you could sneak in some veggies there too, which is even better. And Wendy, do you have any recipes? Doesn't necessarily have to be something that you've done in your nonprofit work, but any recipes? I know you're a food allergy warrior mom, so any new things you want to share with the group?
I just have maybe the best chocolate cake recipe that I've ever had, and it's egg-free, milk-free, and isn't because there are substitutions. That's the original recipe. So I can share that with anybody that wants it, but I don't cook anymore. Since my allergy child has grown up, I'm kind of on strike. I mean, I cook, but not like I used to, not 3 meals a day.
Got it. I mean, chocolate cake sounds good to me. We kicked off this, the food service summit with another panel, and I asked what their wish list would be, either as a mom or caregiver of someone with food allergies, or as someone with food allergies themselves. And one of our participants said a whole like buffet of pastries, just a lot of different pastries that I can eat, because it's so hard when you're managing milk, eggs, soy, peanuts, you're managing so many of those allergies. Usually you're not going to sneak fish or shellfish into pastry, but a lot of the top 9 or sesame can be in those pastries. So that was one of her lists. And mom, Monica, the dietitian, she's also a mom, she echoed that. She said definitely pastries. Yeah. All right, let me see here. What other questions? Did we see something else come in, or I think we answered Rachel's. And my colleague on the back end has been putting in some information on the Fair Check Instructor training if you guys are interested, but also some common allergen substitutions if you were interested in learning more. Oh, and Sarah from Hungry Harry's. Hungry Harry's is actually one of their sponsors for the event, and Daya. They're providing some administrative support for the food service summit. So I do see Sarah from Hungry Harry's is here. They do all sorts of recipe testing, and they have different baking mixes at our food service summit. And I mean, at our fair summit, which was in Orlando this year in September, we did a lot of work to put on a lunch, which was top 9 free. We had a veggie burger, we had chicken, we had veggies. We got a lot of really good feedback on the veggies, salad, all kinds of really good stuff. And there was a hot dog, and we did offer cupcakes at the end of it. And Hungry Harry's was able to provide us with that recipe. But I am interested in trying yours too, Wendy. I'm not counting that out yet.
I'd be happy to share. And also I should mention, in Orlando, my older son, who is now in FAIR's Rising Professional Group, said one of his favorite things at the session or at the conference was going through a buffet for the first time, and just everything's labeled. He had never done that before. He's 26, so that was big. And the cupcakes were amazing.
I mean, the food was delicious. The cupcakes were delicious. The veggies were delicious. And we did hear a lot of great feedback from the group. I see Carly did put in the chat, our loaded baked potatoes are another hit. That sounds really yummy. And as it starts to get colder, these chilies, the sloppy joes, these warm, cozy, comfortable meals they speak to me. They really do.
We do a shepherd's pie, like a deconstructed shepherd's pie for the kids, and they love that. We didn't think it was going to be a hit, so we tried it last year, and they were like, "When's it coming back?" And unfortunately, it was like in the same week where all the school breaks are, like Thanksgiving and Christmas fall in the same week every year in a cycle. So this year we moved it up, so they'll get it like the first week every single time.
Got it. Actually, Wendy brings up a good point. We don't have a ton more time, so I think we only have time for a couple more questions. But you did bring up labeling and ingredients. So when you guys, when DC Central Kitchen or the Fortune Project, when you guys do have more community-based meals, that's not like a set menu for a specific participant, do you provide ingredient lists for them to make an informed decision, or is it all done kind of, prep beforehand and then presented to them at the meal? How does it work? We can start with Reilly.
So what instantly came to mind for me is that I also host hands-on nutrition workshops where we do a lot of cooking, and I do have a participant that has over 14 allergies. So yeah, but she loves cooking. She's in the garden. She's awesome. So with our nutrition workshops, we tend to prepare a lot of the things beforehand. My video just keeps coming off on its own. And so yeah, so we have this information readily available, but there are times where we may forget. So for instance, we made carrot bread yesterday, and the recipe called for coconut oil, and that was one of her allergens. So we forgot about that, but we can easily, we always have an alternate always readily available. So, we can pivot as quickly as possible, but those are the things that when you have these clients or what their allergens are, and you have your staple items, you can always switch things in and out very quickly.
That's great. You have that knowledge to be able to pivot like that. Not everyone has, like a culinary background or even a dietitian background to be able to make those substitutions on the fly. So that's awesome that you have the knowledge and skill set to be able to do that.
Yeah. It's even trickier because again, we're baking. So baking is,
right.
You don't really have as much wiggle room. So,
right.
Having that knowledge base is definitely helps.
Yeah, good point. You have to definitely be a lot more exact and more precise with the ingredients that you are substituting in. I'm sure, Wendy, you experienced that in your years in making food for your son, but you can't just sub, one fat for another fat, because it's not going to give you the same texture, same color, same flavor. So it definitely can be a lot of experiments in the kitchen. So it's good that she likes to cook. 14 food allergies, that must be a little bit challenging to manage, but
right.
Yeah.
And adult onset as well. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We don't have to get into her individual. We don't have to get in. I'm so curious. I have questions about that case. I don't remember what my original question was.
Labels.
Yes, I know, because it wasn't one of the ones that I had written down. Wendy, reminded me of this. Sammy, do you label any dishes when you're preparing meals for the community?
So we don't necessarily label them, but we run all of our recipes out of Mosaic, that menu building software. So we're always able to print and provide labels or nutrient information if we need to. For DCPS, our main vendor or our main client in our school foods, they list all of our ingredients online if requested. So there's always open, kind of like any parent can look online and find any ingredient they need, and then the community, they can just reach out to us.
And then if there's a substitution that gets updated in real time, or yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Great. That's what we need. We needed a very efficient process here. Wendy, are there any populations that you work with that may not immediately come to mind when you're thinking about food insecurity?
Yeah, well, one that was so not surprising to me, but I didn't realize how huge it is college hunger. And, we talk about creativity. College students who are food insecure and also have food allergies have to be extremely creative just to be able to eat. And so we work with food pantries, and we have made one of our big initiatives this fiscal year to work or to reach out to college pantries and to see how we can help them better serve their clients. Because like at a conference, a hunger conference, a few months ago, I heard a presenter talk about how she had to decide, should I take the bus from my off-campus housing to school today, or should I save that money, walk, so I'll, have something to eat today? And if you have food allergies, you can't search for the free pizzas and free donut days to get by that day, because you can't eat at those events. So, college hunger being at an all-time high is something that we really need to focus on.
Yeah, we've heard that from our community as well. And a lot of college and universities do have or are implementing food pantries, as we talked about before. But being able to provide food that is appropriate for a student with food allergies, not just being able to provide food. You have to be able to make sure that there are some substitutions that are appropriate for them. Do they have are they able to cook it? Someone with food allergies, brown rice may be a staple, but if they don't have access to a stove or a clean pot or pan, or even a way to wash that pot or pan, then a bag of brown rice isn't really going to do anything for them. So as you had mentioned before, there's a lot that goes into making a list of what items would be appropriate for this population, and that you would want to put in your food pantry.
Right. And you have to worry about quantity. Do you have enough of what everyone needs? Because food allergies is such an individual situation. And you don't just want to have a shelf of the top, something that is top 9 free. If there's somebody with just a dairy allergy, or somebody that, you want to have individualized, and it's very hard for food pantries, especially when their stock, what they have in inventory is typically from food donations. So,
and you're right. The emphasis is usually on the top 9 free. We see that at stations, in college dining. We see that in, different manufactured products, top 9 free candy. I don't know. I'm just thinking Halloween in my head. But there are children or adults that are only allergic to one thing, and then it ends up being a little bit over restrictive when they are not forced to, but when they are always presented with top 9 free, and they only need to avoid one. So yeah. Well, I think
plus a lack of variety. Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, you're right.
Just so many issues.
You're right. As a dietitian, I always promote diet diversity too. So, and it just gets boring if it's the same thing all the time. So, I think that's all we have time for today, unless you guys have any closing remarks you wanna share with the community.
I encourage anybody who's interested in DC Central Kitchen to reach out. I can put my email in the chat if you'd like. And yeah, it was really great being here, and thanks for having me.
And same here. I can also share my email, and FOODiversity is spelled with 1 D. So it's food, and then diversity uses the D of food. So if you search it.
Yep, and I echo my fellow speaker sentiments as well. Thank you guys for having me, and it was great hearing everyone else's background and work as well.
On our speaker page, if you search Fair Food Service Summit, and you go onto the speaker page, the speaker bios are listed on there, along with the organizations that our panelists are working with or for, and there should be direct links in the program guide that I sent out to you. So I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you to our panelists, and for those who joined the session, please be sure to join us for our next and final session, Get Proactive About Emergency Planning in Food Allergies, in about 15 minutes. So thank you so much.
Thank you.